Hey, it's Mina. Welcome to the third episode of Full Impact interview series of former corporate leaders turned entrepreneur. The purpose of this series is to share with you their career transitions, stories, struggles, and triumphs, so you too can take actions to make the change you want to see in your life and in the world. Today, my guest is Ben Brooks, joining me live from New York. And Ben is a former SVP turned entrepreneur, now the founder and CEO of Pilot, a startup with amazing kinds like Pinterest and MadLife. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm so happy to have connected with you. So tell us, what do you do and who do you serve?
So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm based here in New York City, and I own an enterprise technology company. We have a weekly employee coaching product. It's an award-winning product that is celebrated, and it's mimicking what I've done for many years, which is be an executive and business coach, and we're just using software to make it affordable, inclusive, and effective.
Amazing. So I know you have transitioned from different positions, from management consultant, and you have several career transitions. So walk me through, how did you get to where you are today and why you're at where you are today?
Well, I was told that Steve Jobs gave one commencement address ever, and it was at Stanford, and it's on YouTube, and I watched it a long time ago, and he said, in your career, you can always connect the dots, but you can only connect them backwards, not forwards. So standing where I am today, doing what I'm doing today, I never would have guessed, right? This wasn't necessarily a plan from the beginning. And I think my career is more like a zigzag, right? And it's not a ladder necessarily, right? I've done a variety of different things, and some of it's based on interests and opportunities, relationships, geography, etc. But I started, in college, I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and it was one of the most fun jobs I've ever had in their management trainee program. They hire more college graduates in America than any other company, and wound up in the defense industry, working for Lockheed Martin out of college. Didn't plan that. I actually thought I was going to be working in the medical device industry, and wound up in defense instead, in airplanes. And I always love airplanes, so that was good. And then wound up in management consulting around aviation. And then from there, learned Lean Six Sigma. I got my black belt training and all of that. And then I wound up in some diversity work that got me in HR. And I never thought I would work in HR. And I found HR was a place I could make a big impact and needed a lot of support and help, and some really great colleagues I had. And then wound up, kind of in HR and marketing, working for a chief marketing officer. And then I became an entrepreneur, not even planning to. So it's been a variety of different things. I think that's sometimes for people that I speak to that are young, maybe they're in college, right? Or they're early in their career. They're like, well, how did you plot from where I am today to where you are? And I said, I didn't know I wanted to be an entrepreneur until 6 years ago. I didn't know I'd ever want to work in HR until I worked in HR. I didn't even know management consulting was a thing until I started researching it and applying for it. I didn't know Lean Six Sigma and spy planes and things were a thing. I didn't know anything. And then it sort of emerges, and sort of the path has emerged as I've sort of walked down it. So that's been a bit of my career.
Well, I guess that's one of the things of living in New York. You have traffic outside.
Exactly.
And the surprises, sounds. So there's the guilt and there's the fear when switching. Did any of these play into your decision makings when you transition from each positions or path?
Yeah, I think on the guilt side, a little less on the guilt, other than, I studied a particular thing in college, and university is very expensive, and am I quote unquote using my degree? What I've kind of since realized on that aspect is my degree was not just my major, it was the whole experience of college. It was the people I met, it was becoming an adult, it was studying abroad, it was learning another language, it was learning how to be a better writer, so I'm using my degree all the time, right? But sometimes I got a little collapsed with like my major, and am I doing my major? And the funny thing is I didn't really have a marketing role until about 10 years after I got a marketing degree.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I think on the fear side, there's been a lot of the fear, right? So for me, I think, you know, fear is sometimes in the unknown. You know, that I had a friend once say that your brain is a dangerous neighborhood to walk through, you know, and so I'd have negative predictions. I mean, there's been a lot of fear on the entrepreneurial path and continues to be at some points. But each changed when I left Denver and moved to New York City about, you know, almost 12 years ago. That had me have to be very fearful. You know, walking my first day at Lockheed Martin, I was worried. I didn't have an engineering degree. I was gay, all these other things that was different. They didn't have a good reputation for gay people back then. And so I've had a lot of fear, but I've worked through it. But it's certainly, I think every time I've zigged, it's not been like, I think sometimes like, oh, you got that new role and you got that new thing. I mean, my second week as a management consultant, I remember going to my hotel room in Memphis, the Marriott, and then having a good cry when I got to my pillow that night because it was just so hard. Like I had great colleagues, right? But they were demanding and they had high standards and I felt inadequate and my learning curve was very steep. So in some ways it was the best thing ever, but it's almost like I was at the gym this morning and you see someone who's really taking their fitness to the next level. Sometimes they injure themselves or they trip or they fall or they look foolish or they're wobbling and they're shaking and whatever. It's actually progress and it's actually growth, but sometimes that looks really messy or that looks really unfortunate. And so that's that's what I had to confront.
Oh, that's wonderful. So what other resistance did you experience besides all the fears? You didn't have guilt, so that's great. Some of us did have guilt to leave our so-called talents behind.
Sure.
So
I think so. The other resistance, sometimes it was in, what other people thought or looking good, explaining it to other people. I remember I had some friends, some of whom are not even friends anymore, but others are still friends, but I became an entrepreneur and they'd say, well, aren't you afraid that, you're going to be unsuccessful and be broke? And you made this horrible move from this successful, high-paying corporate job, which would sort of get in my head and have me think, oh my gosh, maybe. And so the kind of gremlins, right? Those like scary voices. And so sometimes the resistance was other people not understanding it. Or they're like, oh, look, you used to be a senior vice president and now you're doing your own thing. Oh, how cute. Like pat me on the head, kind of patronizing. And it's interesting now because they see I've been at it a while and it's going okay and I'm enjoying myself and they're not always enjoying themselves. But it was a thing that, it didn't, they're like, oh, well, like, wait, you go to like a co-working space? You don't have an office in a skyscraper? I'm like, no, I wouldn't even want that. But like, it just didn't line up. So that resistance was, comparing myself to other people. Sometimes the resistance was, different economics, like moving to New York was different cost of living and I didn't get a big raise necessarily. Sometimes, there's, other resistance that I had, was just, the learning curve, and the fear and uncertainty and all of that. So I think that the thing is, I think when people think about career changes and switches, it's like, I'm gonna, do something amazing. And it sounds great. You're pursuing your dreams. You're doing a thing you really want to do. But what happens is often the emotions that come up in the face of that are actually kind of pretty negative emotions or scary emotions, even though it's positive. And it's actually staying in something that you don't like actually can be less upsetting than pursuing something you do like.
I can relate to that. Not that I want to say anything bad about my professions. It made me great money. I had a great life, but I wasn't fulfilled. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I will say doing my corporate job or even leading a department was a 1,000 times easier than what I'm doing and failing. And exactly, I'm still thinking about the Steve Jobs speech, and then it's interesting. After all these years, people are still resist to change. All of us want to change, but we don't.
Yeah.
So that's the human part of how do we help to bring it forward, to move the word forward a little bit, because 80, I'm not sure the Gallup poll has changed much, but it used to be 85% of us are disengaged and unhappy at work. And I would want to see like either they change or they make it happier at work, because that's a better way to live a life.
And that's, Pilot, my software is very much in that vein. It's, basically, we believe that you deserve and can be happy at work, and that we want people to feel powerful at work, because happiness is sort of like a second or third level order outcome, right? Mm-hmm. Of different behaviors and actions that then produce the happiness, right? And people sort of like look for the happiness like it's a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow, rather than do the work that they need to do that would actually generate the feelings that would then result in the happiness. So, second, third level outcome of happiness. And so that's where, I think a lot of the thing is everyone's like, oh, well, like big companies suck and work sucks and HR sucks. And it's all about like, it's strange to me, because I'm like, well, they don't have to. And and the people that are like, the thing is, big companies are full of employees. Like, why don't employees make it better? It's always sort of like management or some top down thing that has to change. In reality, our point of view is employees have a lot of responsibility. And one of the big things that's changed that universities and graduate schools are not keeping up with the pace of change in the world, unfortunately, although I'm a big supporter of education, is that you have to be very self-directed in your career. And the idea of like employee experience, employee engagement was the thing for like a long time. The new thing now is everyone talks about employee experience, treating like a customer and what's the end-to-end experience, which is all great. But the experience is also sort of what you make of it, right? Walt Disney World has an amazing experience, right? Like there's no trash, there's like people to help you. It's kind of wonderful, but you could have a crappy time at Disney World if you didn't go on the rides, or you had a bad attitude, or you didn't want to, like, you wouldn't stand in line, or you threw a fit, right? Mm-hmm. So even the best experience still requires sort of a willing spirit and a participant, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we're trying to educate to people, is to say, hey, like, part of this is you have your part, right? Your responsibility and your ownership of your career and your experience at work. And if you want more flexibility, figure it out. If you want more feedback, go get it. If you want a different relationship with your manager, change it. If you want to, like, get the resources you need, advocate for them, right? Mm-hmm. Meetings are a waste of time, make them better, or don't go to them, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just really about that individual responsibility. It's kind of how I've seen my career. I've worked at companies, some of the companies I've worked at have not been overly well run, right? But I still made a big difference, and I had great jobs, and I learned a lot, and I made good money, and I got to grow. And I wasn't waiting for the company to figure it out. I was proposing. I think I've had 3 or 4 jobs at 3 or 4 different companies where I have written the job description.
Oh, wow.
Most people never written a job. Like, what job do you want? Propose it. Most managers like, oh wait, you're talented. You want to stay here and do something? You think we need to do this? Great, right? And that's what I did. But most people say, oh, they'd rather just swipe like they're on a dating app, left and right. Oh, I want this job, or I don't want that job. Oh, this one's pretty enough, this one's not, right? And they get like kissing a lot of frogs, rather than say, well, what do I want to do right here, right now?
Mm-hmm. A lot of us, it is easier for us since we're on the other side. As entrepreneurs, we have to try different things. We just make things work. Mm-hmm. But then when we're as employees, even when I was the department head, so many people, even the executives, come to complain to me. And it almost feels like I used to complain a lot too, because when we complain, we expect others to fix our problem. Mm-hmm. So how would your software, that is a great idea, by the way, how does it play into the role of helping them to step up? Because our human nature is just not to change. I think we're programmed to screw up ourselves. That's just how humans are built. It's not that we're lazy, some of us maybe. But how would that change, make them to have small changes and then help them to grow slowly? Like they won't be able to jump right away.
Well, I think, economists assume humans are rational and self-interested, but humans are nuts. We're all irrational. We make dumb choices all the time that are not in our self-interest, and we self-sabotage. And so behavioral economics is a really fascinating field about how people actually behave, right? Often not in their self-interest. And so with Pilot, we think about it like, if you've got a complaint, like if you're my manager, right, and you don't give me good direction, I could complain about that, right? And a complaint sort of discharges it, right? It's sort of the discharge of anger or shame or guilt or something else, right? Problem is, if I think that you're messed up, right, and you're a crappy manager, then I'm sitting over here, I'm like, well, Mina's a crappy manager. What can I do about that? Not a lot, because Mina's messed up. If you take responsibility, right, and say, which is different than fault or blame. And a lot of people collapse responsibility with blame or fault. And it's not to say it's okay that you're bad at giving instruction or direction. It's just saying, I'm going to do something about it. I'm not willing to tolerate this. I'm not willing to deal with this. And so instead I may say, hey Mina, like sometimes I feel like, when you give me projects, I'm not always clear and I'm bringing you the thing that you don't want. I'm not happy and you're not happy. Can we sit down and write in the Google Doc together the expectations? And I have 10 questions I want to ask every time we have to start a new project. So we're on the same page, right? That's me taking responsibility. Now it may help you be better, it may not, but it's me saying, let me fix something. There's a saying, I have some friends who are sober and they're in Alcoholics Anonymous, and there's the saying that when you start to point at other people, there's a saying they say, you clean up your side of the street. Don't worry about his side of the street. Don't worry about her side of the street. Clean up your side of the street. We all have a house. We all have a front yard and a little sidewalk. Pick up the trash, water the lawn, plant some flowers, clean up your side of the street. And that's, I think, ultimately probably the most important competency if people are listening to this at work, no matter what industry or role or goal you have, clean up your side of the street. Be responsible, right? Get poor direction, make it clearer, put it on paper, right? Make some assumptions, document them, get in sync, check, ask, right? Push back, whatever it is, negotiate for resources. And that, that's, a big part of how I see the future of work changing. Isn't necessarily this goal that for 40 years, management consultants have tried to make managers better. I don't know if we're gonna have better managers. I think we can have better employees that can meet managers halfway.
Well, I think being a leader starts with being a better employee, then they grow into being a better manager because they understand how each side play into it. Understanding is what we net off because we're never taught how to deal with other human beings in school. You just never know. We learn all the technical skills. But I think humans probably the most difficult part to deal with. Anything goes. Everything else has a little bit more discipline, but humans, anything goes.
Well, there's some study that was like, the percentage of problems that are basically people problems in an organization. And it's something like 85 or 90% of problems are people problems. And to your point, we don't generally, other than maybe even psychology and communications and these fields that are really important and helpful, they kind of from a systems level or broadcast or clinician, but they don't always just teach us kind of emotional intelligence, right? I remember I worked at a summer camp in college. I was a camp counselor at a summer camp at Stanford University, and one of the things that the camp taught kids was how to apologize, in particular to their parents, but in general. And you think, where do you learn to apologize, right? Like that's not in the core curriculum in your 8th grade class, right? And there was a 4-part thing, I still remember today. You want to acknowledge what you did. You want to apologize and say sorry and be explicit about that. You want to ask what you can do to make it right. And then you want to recommit to the kind of person you'll be or relationship or whatever it may be in that regard. And so it's acknowledge, apologize, make it right, and recommit. It's like the 4-part apology. It's like, oh my God, breakthrough. I still use it to this day is to make sure I'm kind of covering my bases, right? And to your point around human skills and interaction, like, I found that my ability to connect with others, to get them to be comfortable, to open up, to influence them, to resolve differences, to work with people that are from wildly different backgrounds, has been more important than my Lean Six Sigma training or my marketing degree or my HR experience, because the technical information that we have is no good if we can't convince someone to change or to take it on.
True. So for your startup, did you fund the whole thing yourself, or you approach investors?
So the pilot is self-funded. So I'm the sole investor, sole founder, sole funder of the company. I own 100% of the company. It comes with a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. And the thing about self-funding a company is you endure a lot more pain upfront, right? It's a much harder road in the short term. In the longer term, you have way more options and potentially way less trouble and grief. But it was a strategic decision. I've never made a fundraising deck. I've never pitched. I've never had a meeting to do that. I have clients and friends who have. I feel confident I probably could have raised some amount of money, in doing that, maybe potentially a lot of money if I wanted to. But what I wanted to do was do something different. And a lot of times investors, in particular venture capitalists, are pattern recognition creatures. That's how the brain works. Smart people, good people, but they are looking for things that they recognize and are familiar with. And so sometimes things that sort of break the mold or go in a different direction don't fit into investors' eyes, or you get investment and they move and shift your business towards a model or something that's been done before. So with us democratizing coaching and wanting to do it to include minorities and to have people be responsible and not have it be about a recruiting platform that helps people switch careers, but we're more like marriage counseling that helps you make your job better without having to leave it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just something that largely we have a couple competitors now in the market, but like it's a category that's pretty new. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we're doing it with software, most of our competitors that do it, you speak to a person, right? Mm-hmm. And there's implications of like logistics and schedule, and it has to be during kind of banker's hours. It's also really expensive. And one of our principles is we really want it to be affordable, and the affordability makes it much more inclusive. People get it earlier in their career. People that are often left out of talent management programs, like individual contributors, right? Mm-hmm. Younger people, often minorities, people in corporate functions rather than client-facing or revenue-generating people. All people that deserve and are worthy of good coaching and development. So by funding it myself, I've been able to navigate those things. And I'm openly gay. Our company is LGBT certified owned business. Companies with supplier diversity now are looking at their supplier diversity, and now LGBT is one of the newer categories in that regard. No one's buying our software because we're an LGBT-owned company, but it is a rare thing. There's very few tech companies that are LGBT-owned. There's a number of events and marketing and graphic design and other different companies like that. But there's some LGBT founders of software companies out there, but they're typically not LGBT-owned. And my view is we can do things, and whether it's give our product away in the future to communities that we think need it, communicate in a particular way, or be very inclusive. Like no one needs to convince me of diversity. I get it, right? Mm-hmm. And even when we first founded the company, stock images that you would use like on a website and marketing collateral and our product and things really had these really horrible depictions of women in particular at work. They were holding a baby and there's milk on their blouse or something, and they had a briefcase and they're in a black tie and they looked like a frazzled mess. And I was like, this doesn't look like most women I know. This looks actually sort of demeaning, right? Or women that they'd have it all be like really young and attractive. They didn't have middle-aged women or older women, right? People of color didn't have, tall, short, whatever. And so we actually hired a bunch of models. We did an original photo shoot of our own imagery that we felt depicted an aspirational and accurate depiction of the modern workforce. And, I don't know, would investors support that or not? They'd probably say, no, screw the images, like whatever, just use an image, doesn't matter. To me, it matters. And that's part of the autonomy I have. And that's like a very small, minor thing, right? But there's a lot of really other things in terms of how fast we want to grow, what we're optimizing around, the kind of people we choose that, there are people we choose to not work with, right? Because we don't like them, or they don't get it, or they want to do things like customize our product, and we know more about coaching than our customers do. So that's our expertise, right? I'm a coach. I have a whole team of coaches that work on the product. And so by being, owned by the founder, we can follow sort of what I believe is the vision for the company that I think is most appropriate.
That's amazing, because I do value the purpose of coaching. Actually, I got executive coaching later in my corporate careers because I was at a high level, but I wish I had that kind of coaching when I was like as a junior, because some of us got lucky with sponsors. So if you don't have sponsor, you're hanging there and then you fight your way up. So I wonder if I had proper coaching, I could move up even faster. But so yeah, that's wonderful that what you're doing. And I will probably have some questions for you offline, all these crazy ideas. I can see how exciting your company can go. And I would love to share my 2 cents with you. So how many?
Don't leave it 2 cents. Give us a whole buck. I want the dollar, you know? Yeah.
I'm thinking about, where we were executive, we have off-site things and then all those things. But then as a junior team members or in the new of our careers, we saw those managers and boss going off-site. We're like, well, we want that too. So with what you're doing, I wonder if you can build that in. Like the software part is great. But what makes us a human is we also like to have the real face-to-face connections. We also want to join in the funds. So not sure how that will build into your business model, but I can see where you can take that.
We actually do live group video coaching as a part of our product. So every month or so, an entire cohort gets together on a chat just like this.
Oh, wonderful.
Group coaching. So we're able to do it, and we're able to do it if people work from home or a remote office or another country. And, there's a limited number of people that are going to be able to fly into an offsite, right? And, party and do all this stuff. So we're sort of thinking of a sustainable model. In good times and bad, you can bring more people in. So we have that human connection. And then people hear from our team through text and email. It's a real person. Everyone's like, it's funny. Someone called us today and they're like, is this Rachel person that I hear from on your team? Is that a real person or is that an avatar? Is that AI? Is that AI? And they're going crazy about this. And one of our colleagues, we call ourselves crewmates, one of our crew for pilots said, no, that's like a real person, right? And they almost didn't believe it. And I always say that, RP is greater than AI. And everyone's like, well, what's RP? I'm like, real people, right? So we have like real people is better than artificial intelligence, right? Artificial flavors we would never think are a good thing. I'm not sure if artificial intelligence is a great thing when it comes to coaching so far. And that's one of the big misconceptions of coaching. And from having coaching is a lot of people think a coach gives you the answer. A coach solves the problem. A coach takes care of it. A good coach doesn't, right? I think I'm a great coach. I've changed people's lives in so many ways by giving them rigorous coaching, but it's not because I tell them what to do or give them the answer, right? I help facilitate their thinking. I help them reflect. I help them pull up. I help them make commitments and hold them accountable and celebrate and give them some, some tips and frameworks and some advice. But generally, I'm not the answer, right? They're the answer. I help them facilitate their own thinking. I had someone on the phone today. They're like, well, I've got option A and I've got option B. And I said, well, it sounds like, you think there's other options you've forgotten? And I said, no, I think those are the two. And I said, well, which one do you think you're going to do? And they talked themselves through it and they figured out and said, okay, now I feel good about that. I didn't say A or B was best, right? And that's where coaching is not about giving people answers. It's a behavior change structure to help facilitate thinking and take greater responsibility for your life.
Wonderful. So what do you trying to figure out currently with your business and yourself to take your business to go to the next level?
Well, 2019, we have 2 KPIs for the company. One's revenue, it's about growth, and the other is about product engagement. And, kind of touch on both of those. So, we fund our company through our sales. And software is a relatively high margin product. And so, we have margin that we can reinvest in our growth. And, we could take outside investment and we may one day, but we're focused on being a profitable company and growing responsibly so we can sustain. And so, that's a big thing. It's like, how do we grow? How do we get into new companies? We're working, like I said, with MetLife, we work with Pinterest, we work with Cadillac, we work with Aon, we're starting to work with CBS soon. We work with Cargo and a bunch of other really interesting organizations. Mm-hmm. And, how do we find more of those? How do we, if you're watching it, like, how can we work with your company, right? That's one of my big things that we're figuring out. How do we generate leads and manage a proper sales cycle? So people buy our product, and when we get into a company, we can expand and give our product to more people because we know people love it. Our net promoter score is an 80, and the net promoter score, you know, is usually from negative 100 to 100 is the range. And generally, if you get a 0, it's pretty good, and it's like doing pretty well. For talent management, the category that we're in, the average score is negative 54, right? Pretty crappy score, and we're scoring like an 80 consistently. So you know, we want to get it in more people's hands because we know it works. We won awards for women's empowerment, leadership development. And the second thing is product engagement. Like, you know, if I gave you a membership to the gym, you would not get fit unless you went to the gym, right? So Pilot is a gym membership for your career, but it only works if people show up to the gym. And so while we have an industry leading participation rate for a full year program, we work in 52-week programs, we want to get that higher. We want to have more engagement, people stay more on track, because it's, you know, most talent management, even the offsite, like you mentioned, that's about intensity, right? Like a restructuring is about intensity. A product development workshop is about intensity, but behavior change comes through consistency, right? So I meditate every day, and it's not, I don't meditate for 5 hours on a Saturday and then I'm good for a quarter. Right? I meditate 20 minutes every single morning. I haven't missed a morning in, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, but it's about that consistency, right? I take my vitamins every evening, consistent. You know, people, you know, every paycheck put money into their 401k and auto debit, and they dollar cost average in the stock market, and they get matching. Consistency, like consistency. And so a lot of talent management is about intensity. So we want consistency. And so one of our other challenges on the product engagement side is, how do we do everything we can to make it fun, to make it frictionless, to make it really impactful and easy? And it's 10 minutes a week, right? And we do a lot of stuff through mobile phone and text message, and it's very, very, you know, we call ourselves post-platform. We're doing something very, very progressive. But, you know, we still have people that don't do it every week. And we text them, and we call them, and we email them. And some people are like, oh gosh, whenever I call, they're like, I'm not behind. I said, no, I'm calling about something else, you know. But one of our things is like, how do we get more people to use our product more consistently? Because we know when they use it, just like the gym, it works. So that's another thing we're trying to figure out this year.
Oh, wonderful. So what's your number one trait for your success?
This beard, no, I don't know. Trait for success. I mean, maybe it's the same thing that we preach in Pilot, probably, and not we preach or we coach in Pilot. It's responsibility, personal responsibility, right? If I want something, ask for it. Something doesn't work, fix it. You know, if something, you know, if I need something, figure it out, right? Give it a try, propose a solution. And I think that that's what, despite the zigs and the zags in my career, sometimes the zigs and the zags were like, oh, recession, everyone has to take 3 months off unpaid, or, oh, we lost this program and your position's been eliminated, or, oh, this, or, oh, that. And they're not always positive zigs or zags, but rather than be like, oh, woe is me, you know, I lost my job, or the company, it's like, okay, well, what else could I do here? What else could I help with, right? And being in action and proactively pitching and proposing. So I think that sense of personal responsibility is probably the number one thing. I think there's obviously plenty of luck and good fortune. There's privilege for the family I was born into, lovely, healthy, wonderful, affirming, middle-class family. Probably God-given gifts with intelligence and talent. So certainly not to say that it's all on me. I think there's a lot of stuff that I just sort of lucked out, right? And had a good hand. But then, you know, that's probably half the equation. And the other half of the equation is, you know, being responsible and also, frankly, working my ass off. I mean, I work like a dog, and I take care of myself, and I'm healthy and things, but there's also sacrifices. And I dated someone once, and he used to say, you know, you can have it all, just not all at once. And I really believe that, right? That, you know, I hopefully will be alive for a long time, but there are certain trade-offs and sacrifices, and the mark of a good startup often is really brutal prioritization. And part of the reason that some startups, right, that raise a lot of money are not very well run is they don't have to prioritize because they're fat, right? They're fat with cash, and so they can be sloppy, and there's less incentive to run well. The day of reckoning comes on that, right? But when you have very limited capital like me, it forces us to do, there's like maybe 100 things that I want to do. There's probably 25 that are like really a good idea. We can do 3 of them, right? Mm-hmm. That's sort of like wince and grimace at the 22 that I can't do right now. So I think that prioritization has been key, and to really know what's the most important thing, which sometimes means upsetting people, making tough choices, enduring things, whatever. But that's another key part of the success, I think.
Yeah, consistency and priority. Yeah, especially as entrepreneurs. Or there's a different things between I recently read between a visionary and integrator. And I found out that as visionaries, we tend to go on different things and have a million ideas. We all want to do a million things. But in order for things to work, we have to choose and maybe just work on one thing or three top any given days. So that also built into our small habits and disciplines that the meditations helps. So myself also, I learned to meditate. Otherwise, it won't be able to go through all the ups and downs with our entrepreneur journeys. So besides meditation, what keeps you going every day, being like with so much energy and excited?
Well, I think there is, wellness in general, right? So getting enough sleep, sometimes I don't get enough sleep, but generally I'm getting a healthy amount of sleep. Keeping a fairly balanced diet, right? Being smart about limiting, alcohol intake, just, working out and getting to the gym regularly. Like there's sort of like, it's almost like my body is a machine and I have to take care of the machine, right? Mm-hmm. I heard Warren Buffett in this documentary, was in this high school in Omaha, and all these kids, he said, if I could buy you one car in the world, any model, you pick. And they all like say, oh, I want this, I want a Maserati, I want a Lamborghini and stuff. He said, what if I told you that was the only car you'd ever have? How would you take care of it? He said, well, that car is your body, right? So that's a big thing. It's like taking care of my body. I think another thing is like also understanding what sort of brings me some energy and joy. Like talking like this lights me up, right? An hour ago being on a call about renewing our cyber liability insurance does not. I have to do the latter, but the former I get to do. So prioritizing and making time for conversations like this, realizing the impact of our product and our services and what we do and getting to feel that, talk to our members. I like selling, right? So optimizing some of the things on my plate are the things that are important to do, but also things that like bring me energy, right? And that's been a big part of, kind of keeping going. And then also, I think early on, I miscalibrated how long all this was going to take. I think someone recently read Shoe Dog, which is Phil Knight's book about Nike.
I love that book. I
haven't gotten to read it, but apparently there's a quote in there that says, the average time it takes to make an overnight success is 8 years, right? And, and it's like, and that's the funny thing, I got all excited about starting a company. I'm only 4.5 years in. Right, on pilot. I have another business, a coaching business I've had for about 6 years, but here I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to work on this for 2 years and we're going to launch, we're going to make all this money, and that has just not been how it's been at all, right? And so I think having a much longer perspective, and I think that the media gives us a very warped perception of like overnight success, right? You throw up a website, you raise some money, you have a product, and then boom, you're Instagram, right? Yes. And that is just not. I mean, look, you can be great, but like. You'll win the lottery more likely than doing that, and literally mathematically. And so I just think that also realizing that it is a journey and it's a long journey, and not worrying. I think I used to get I confused signal and noise, right? Mm-hmm. We'd have a deal that I thought was going to close, and we're at the finish line, and then we wouldn't get the deal. I'd be like, no one's going to buy our product, like, and I'd freak out, right? Mm-hmm. Or we'd have an issue or whatever. Instead, being like, well, that's an N of one, right? That is not representative of any sort of trend, right? Or insight. And I just need to, it's a numbers game. I have to put more out there, right? So I think also just having the perspective that this is a long road and a long journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think our media, not just the social media, kind of screw a lot of us up. Everyone's thinking about making money quick.
Yep.
Overnight success. If not, then they will be so depressed, then they never change.
Yep.
It's just a sad cycle. So the more of us thinking about telling people it's a long thing, but it's fulfilling at the same time.
Yep.
Then more people will be taking the small steps to just feel themselves out and stick around instead of giving up after 2 weeks.
Exactly.
So how do people find you, and if they want to learn more about you?
So I'm pretty findable online. Ben Brooks is my name, and my handle is Ben Brooks NY as in New York. So Ben Brooks NY on Instagram, on Twitter, LinkedIn is linkedin.com/in/Ben Brooks NY. I have a public page on open profile on Facebook. But LinkedIn in particular is a great place. I do share a lot on Instagram about business as well. And then Pilot itself is pilot.coach. We're a coaching company, so the URL is pilot.coach. We have a live chat. You can leave a message there. We'll get back to you. And we're redoing our website right now, but we have a good one now. We'll have even a better one later, but to check out our product, if you think it's a good thing for your company, we can give a demo and tell you more about it. It's affordable. We don't do any integration. We can move quickly. It's amazing. People love it. You look like a hero. So yes, I'm findable, and I'd love to just, we've connected, through an online community, right?
Yes, our Zebra community.
Our Zebra
founders.
And so, that was something that I read about in the New York Times 2 months ago, my hometown newspaper here, and I didn't even know about it. And I joined this community, and there's really good community management. And it's on this really cool platform. And then the vibe is great and it's super diverse and everyone's really interesting. And Zebras, I'll have you explain, Mina, but it's just a really interesting thing. And here you said, I want to interview people. And I said, we're happy to talk. And then here we are, right?
Exactly. Oh, thank you for accepting my invitation so quickly. So is there anything else you would like to share with our audience?
Well, I think a couple of things. So first, if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, I get this question a lot, right? Like, I'm going to go make the leap or be an entrepreneur. I would say, slow down. And I'm enjoying being an entrepreneur, but if 100 people are thinking about being an entrepreneur, about 98 people should not be, right?
Sure.
It's a pretty crazy, difficult, scary path. And I don't even, the money is only part of it. It's psychologically, emotionally, very challenging. And, look, there are things that are a good idea. Going to the movies is a good idea, right? Going to the beach is a good idea, right? Maybe having a glass of wine could be a good idea. Starting a business isn't necessarily a good idea, right? And so that's one, is just really learn more about entrepreneurship. If you want to be an entrepreneur, hang out with entrepreneurs, be in a co-working space, help advise a company, help test a product, get a front row seat before you sign up for something, right? Like if you were going to move to India, you'd probably visit before you agreed to move your life, right? Mm-hmm. So sort of try before you buy, right?
Yes.
And look, we need more entrepreneurs in the world. I am pro entrepreneur, but I think it'll help you if you have a better sense of what you're getting into, right?
Yes.
Second thing is I have a 16-year-old mentee in high school here, and he's a Dominican immigrant, lives in the Bronx, he'll be first gen to go to college, hopefully, if we get him there. And he's always thinking about what's his idea, right? And he's obsessed with his idea. And I said, it's just really not the idea. Ideas are cheap, right? I said, the thing you have to fall in love with is the problem you're solving. And some of the best entrepreneurs I know care more about the problem. Like Pilot, the problem was always helping people feel powerful at work and be happy at work. That was always the problem, right? We first had a direct-to-consumer online product and assessment that we don't even have anymore. We got rid of that, threw that in the river, right? That was our solution. We learned some things, we iterated, we changed, right? And so what we have now is drastically different than what we started, but the problem's the same one. And that's what we're in love with, is that problem. And that's why we want to get that weekly engagement number above 80%, even though it's damn good and the industry average is about 5%. We want to get it higher because we want people going to the gym, because we want people fit at work. So that's the thing to think about, is if you're thinking about what's your idea, think about what problem would I really like to solve, and what problem would I be willing to spend 10 years trying to solve, right? And all the money I had, and all the energy, and half my friendships, that's a key
yes. That one's painful.
Totally. And I guess the other thing is, I'm a very revenue first entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the press talks about venture-backed companies and fundraising most of the time. Mm-hmm. But a majority of small businesses in America are not venture-backed. Very few small businesses are venture-backed, and even startups aren't always venture-backed, even the majority of the time. Mm-hmm. But that just seems like that's the only way to go, right? And it could be. I've had friends that have raised money and done super well and done amazing things and worked with great investors who gave them amazing advice. And I've had plenty of people who have not had that experience, right? So it's not to say that investment's bad or VCs are bad at all, right? There's some really great ones. But, the focus often is on expenses and not income. So then people, when I would talk to people, right, and they're like, oh, like, where's your office and how many people you have and what's your brand and all stuff, and like your website and all this is like expense, right? The smarter question is like, what's your product? Where are your customers? How are you going to grow? Like, whatever. So I learned this when I started coaching before I built Pilot. I have an executive and business coaching practice. And I just, didn't expect to ever be a coach, didn't expect to have a business, but I started my business with an $88 investment, right?
Wow.
Moo.com makes these really nice business cards. If you ever need business cards, use Moo, they're the best. And I didn't even have a logo. I didn't even know what to call myself. I didn't have a website. And I just had like Ben Brooks or like business consultant or something, and I used a generic template that they had. And I made $100,000 from those $88 in business cards and a few lunches, right? On my Amex card, like very little investment, right? Because I was focused on making money, not spending money. Now, I eventually made a really bomb-ass website. I made a really nice website and a video biography and all this really nice stuff. And on benbrooksny.com is the website. And it was, but only after I'd made money. And a lot of people, when they start out, think, oh, I got to have this and I got to have that. And what I found is people were happy to hire me as a coach without a website. And you have to let the market decide. And that's part of lean startup and minimum viable product and things. And, Mark Zuckerberg has said, and Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn too, that if you're not at least a little bit embarrassed by your product, you released it too late. And I think that sometimes the wanting to impress people and all of us, and it's our adventure and ourselves, that, we think that everyone's like sort of watching us and cares, and people just don't, right? They got their lives and their own things to do. So that's the other thing I would just sort of impress on people is think revenue first. Like, how can you make money learning, right? Like if you need to do market research, how could you get paid to do that, right? If you need to build a prototype, how could you charge in that process? And because that's when you start to, one, honor yourself, two, find different sources of capital, and then you really prioritize. And I think if we have more conversations around sort of revenue first, it doesn't mean like profitability, it doesn't mean lots of revenue, it doesn't mean mountains of cash, but it is the idea that you should be focused on doing things that over time will generate income, because fundamentally, if it's a business, you got to do that. And you need to manage your expenses down below your income so you have a profit. And it's like so fundamental, but there's not nearly enough conversation around kind of this income and revenue and cash flow centricity and keeping expenses down. Not, everyone now brags about how nice the office is and the perks and the iced coffee and the massages and the trips to Palm Springs and all of that, which is like, okay, cool. Like if I was an employee, that'd be great. But as an owner, right, and thinking like a board member and an owner, right, an investor, I want to, I'll offer those things when we can afford them, right? But I'm not going to offer them before we can afford them.
That, my friends, very valuable pieces of advice. I had one failed business, one failed startup. It's all about spending money.
Yep.
Of course, I learned it the wrong way. Now is then when I start my consulting business on the side, I had my first 5 figures even before I had my business card. My clients like, do you have a business card? No. Do you have a website? No. But I can give you the result, then you give me the money.
And that's what they want.
Exactly.
No one's like, oh my God, I have this great consultant. You should see her business card. You got to check out her website. No, they talk about the fact that you help them with whatever you're helping them with, right? They talk about the results.
Exactly. But a lot of us actually didn't know. It's funny how our mind works. I think it has something with our fear of being judged.
Yeah.
We have to look good, especially coming from the corporate side. We'll always look good, polished.
Yep.
So we have to look good in front of our former colleagues. It sinks so much money into non-necessary things. So that particular one, I'll clip it out. I'll probably share with so many people. Just listen to this when you need to start your business. It's a very, very important piece of information.
And what I say about that is you want to sort of not use the L word, which is launch. We learned that mistake with Pilot, or a lesson, I guess you could say, but because of all the things you just said, trying to impress people and put your best foot forward and the corporate learning and all that, we were just very focused on like the launch. And, you would have thought we were, Elon Musk and SpaceX and putting a rocket up to the, space station. And so we had these videos and this brand and this social media and all this legal stuff and this IT things and this PR. We didn't need really any of that, right? And it's probably what we spent a majority of our money and focus on, and it didn't generate us any money. So it's funny, my first business, I did a better job than Pilot initially, right? But I got really excited about Pilot, about like what it could be. But again, focused on sometimes the things that I like to do or the things that I thought would make us look good. And when we launched, people thought we looked good, but we weren't having the financial results or the momentum or the learning that we needed to. And so I think that that's where I think as I talk to other entrepreneurs now and they talk about their launch and how they're going to grind it out for a year and then have this big ta-da, I say like, what if you didn't have a launch? What if it just sort of emerged incrementally and things sort of just started to happen, right? You started to communicate. You just put up a Facebook post about it and you just put something on LinkedIn and then you just did a little survey and then you just have a little prototype and there's not even a web page. Maybe it's just an Evernote note link and it's a this and it's just, and all of a sudden it just becomes a thing because you have the momentum rather, like rather than this whole thing where we have to like, you think of almost a construction paradigm, right? I'm not going to open the store until I have all the stuff. Well, while you're getting the store ready, you're paying rent. You have inventory, you have staff, you're just bleeding, right? Mm-hmm. Versus saying, hey, look, like we have one piece of, we have one item in the store. Let's open the door and see if someone buys something.
Exactly. Exactly. Wow. That should be the first way to go is to now, I'm also sharing with people building your company from outside in. That means your revenues, your customers first before you figure out all the back ends, the how to, those will come so easily once you figure out who's paying you.
Yeah.
So my last question, what's your vision for your business and for the world?
Well, we say it's to help people feel powerful at work. And I think of that as if you're powerful in one domain of your life, you can be powerful in all domains of your life. And so when I think about most people don't feel powerful at work, right? They don't, when you think about power, it's not force, right? It's not oppressing someone, right? Power is sort of this inside out sort of radiance and sense of agency and ownership and locus of control. And, the people that give you the power, it's yourself. At the end of the Wizard of Oz, right? She says, but you've always had it, my dear. You've always had it. And so when I think about our mission, right, is to help people feel powerful at work and beyond. And being powerful can mean taking care of a medical condition. Being powerful can mean losing weight. Being powerful can be negotiating your relationship with a significant other in a way that makes it more enjoyable, right, or last longer. Being powerful can be being financially responsible, right? Being powerful can be being involved in the democracy of your country or leadership in your faith or your community. So, it can be in how you raise your kids or the friendships you have or the rewards and treats you give yourself in life, the experiences you have, all of that. And so when I think of, I want to have an impact, right? That's what when I think of if I, when I die, I want to be donated to science, and then maybe cremated. But if I had a tombstone, I'd want to say, made an impact, right? And that's part of the, I want to be donated to science is like, this is not worth anything once I'm dead, right? If I still can, help people get educated or test medicine or do other things like that, give organs, whatever, and I'm useful after I'm dead, that's being powerful, right? Like I'm making a difference even after I'm dead. And that's where I think, if that's the life that I end up building, right? And I hopefully am on the path to do that. I know that I've made an impact with a number of people so far, but compared to what I'd like to do, I have barely gotten started, right? It is a hair on my head, of progress compared to the impact that I'd like to have. And imagine if people generally felt powerful, I just think a lot of the problems of the world would be addressed and transformed.
So true, so true. I can talk with you for hours. One day I might need to fly to New York and then we'll have a drink and then we hack it out. But I want to respect of your time. And so today we'll wrap it up and maybe later on we'll bring you in for another session and then you can share where you are with your pilots. And today, thank you so much for joining my live. And I hope whoever's joining, I haven't been able to monitor because I'm so captivated with what you're saying. And it's amazing conversation. Hope we'll continue. I will take it offline and also see you at the Zebra, either online or at the offline events. And until next time, my friend, all the best. And yeah, we can keep talking about your pilot. I'm so excited for you. And I'm sure you impact so many people and change the statistics of employee experience.
Exactly. Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'd love for anyone that's watching today to connect online, whether you're Twitter or you're on YouTube or Instagram or LinkedIn, Ben Brooks NY on all of them. So find me so we can connect, and if I can add impact to you or be of value to you, let me know. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. I will see you next time.
All right.
Thank
Cheers.
you, Ben. Bye.